Pauken, the Dallas Morning News. I was struck by something you said very early about, and I know this is something that people talk about, that Republicans are more apt to criticize Democrats and recognize some of their own failings, and I suspect that this sort of thing happens on both sides. But I'm wondering what you think would it take to get intellectual honesty back into the debates in Washington?
Back when I started in the conservative movement, there were a lot of differences between and among us, between traditionalists and libertarians. We saw it even within the Reagan administration, where people who were economic conservatives, uncomfortable with the social issues, and vice versa. And there were some who were more traditionalist conservatives. But there was really this kind of created tension. And I think one of the things that came out of the Goldwater movement, came out of the Reagan movement, it was driven from the grassroots up. And as a result, you had people who were pretty doggone independent. They were individualists, and they could disagree with one another and yet come out together and be part of a team. And I think the big difference between what the Goldwater movement was all about, what the Reagan movement was all about, and what happened with Karl Rove and the Bush group, it became a top-down imposition. You've got to be with us 100%, and if you're not, you're on the other side. And a very different dynamic began to take place. And then also you begin to develop, as I point out, for National Review, the great magazine that was founded by William F. Buckley, a man I had so high regard for, and that touted Barry Goldwater and touted Ronald Reagan, to run a piece by David Frum attacking patriotic Americans like Robert Novak for daring to say we're making a mistake in going to war in Iraq. That, unfortunately, and John Gizzi left a moment ago, is what troubles me a little bit about the neoconservatives. It's an ideology which is, you better salute, you better be with us on these foreign policy issues that are important to us, or you're on the other side. I find interesting, there are a lot of people on the right and the left who agree on a lot more than they used to. There are some differences on social and cultural issues, but as I talk about even in the book, there's some people on the left who have warned about what's happening with the coarsening of the culture and the consequences. But that's always, the cultural issues are tough to deal with. But in terms of what's happened to an America that once had a strong manufacturing base, you've got people like Bill Grider, and who's identified as left of center, Rights for the Nation, talking about the goal of rebuilding a manufacturing base, bringing good jobs home, and a lot of us now who would classify ourselves as conservatives. There are people who are left of center who, and I would put on that first issue, my friend Jim Webb, who was a Republican in the Reagan administration, now is in the Senate as a Democrat. Jim has been very forceful in talking about economic policy and the loss of good jobs that have been shipped overseas. So I do think there's a potential for people to come together, Republicans and Democrats, and put the good of the country first. And I think we have to. And that's, to me, there's a sense of the moment that this country's in more trouble than it's been in a long time. And hey, can we come together on the issues? I don't think it's happening now. I think the Obama administration may have had an opportunity to do some of that, but they missed it by pushing hard for their agenda to move the country to the left. But I think there's a real opportunity for people of goodwill on both sides of the aisle to find areas of agreement and address these issues. And that's the second half of the book. I lay out some proposals along those lines.